Hello students, this is Professor C. Tanuja Bhati from Jain College of Engineering, Belagavi, Department of MBA. Today, we will be seeing a revision lecture on Module 4, Input Tax Credit. Module 4 Input Tax Credit, as per VTU syllabus, it covers Introduction to Input Tax Credit, Eligibility to avail ITC, registration under GST, persons not liable for registration, compulsory registration in certain cases, what is the procedure for registration, deemed registration, returns under GST, furnishing of returns, first return, revision of returns and penalty or late fee. This module completely comprises of only theory. There is no problems relating to module 4. It's a complete theory module. So let us see the theory revision of module 4, Input Tax Credit. Now, as we already know that unit number 4, Input Tax Credit, it comprises, as per the VTU syllabus, it covers the following. So let us begin with the revision. What is the meaning of Input Tax Credit? Now, see, whenever, suppose if you are a supplier and you are supplying the goods, so you collect tax from the customer. So what tax you're collecting from the customer becomes your output tax. But similarly, when you are purchasing the goods, you're purchasing the goods means you have to pay the GST tax. So that becomes your input tax. So what tax you're paying, GST tax that you're paying on your sales becomes your output tax, and the GST tax that you're paying on your purchases becomes your input tax. Now government says that all the registered dealers, whoever is registered under GST, they have to pay the GST amount to the government. Now, what amount they are supposed to pay to the government? They are supposed to pay the output tax, but government says since you have paid tax on your purchases, you can take the credit of that. So the tax that is paid on the purchases is called as input tax, and the credit of which you are going to take to set off the payment of your output tax is called input tax credit. So the time of paying tax on the output, at the time of paying tax on the output, the tax already paid on the inputs can be reduced and only the balance amount is to be paid to the government. So whatever credit you are using to set off against the output, it is called as input tax credit. So example, here we have seen the tax payable on output is suppose rupees 450. Tax that you have paid on your input is suppose 300. So you will get a credit of 300. So you need to pay to the government only 450 minus you have to take this credit of 300, that is only 150 rupees you need to pay to the government. So always remember, input tax is the tax that you are paying on your purchases and you're using this tax to pay your output tax to the government. Therefore, it is called input tax credit because you're getting the eligibility of credit. Now, can everyone take and avail the input tax credit? So, there is some eligibilities to claim input tax credit. So, what it is? Every registered person can claim, only registered person. Remember, only persons who are registered under GST can claim the credit of tax paid on purchases. Either you are purchasing inputs, you will get the credit. If you're purchasing input services, you'll get the credit. If you're purchasing capital goods, you're going to get the credit. So remember, every registered person is going to get the credit when he's paid tax on either inputs, capital goods, or input services. Now, what is the basic conditions for which after which he can claim the ITC? So there are 4 basic conditions. First of all, the dealer should be in possession of a document. Suppose I have made a purchases and I have to claim a credit of that. So I should have a document that states or proves that I have made the purchases and I have paid tax on that. So document can be nothing but an invoice. So the dealer, that whoever is going to claim the input tax credit, he should be possessing having the document. After that is the said goods and services have been received. So whatever I have been purchased, I should receive that. Or even if I am want to take some services, I should have received those services. All my returns should be filed, okay, under section 39, and the tax charged on the purchases has been paid to the government by the supplier. So remember the four conditions. Only registered person can claim ITC. And what are the four conditions? Number one, the dealer who is claiming ITC should be having a document to prove that yes, he is made some purchases. The document can be invoice. Then he should receive those goods or services. He should file all the returns, and whatever tax he is paid on the purchases, the supplier of it has to pay the tax to the government. Next, in case of capital goods, yes, in case of capital goods also you can claim the ITC, but not on the depreciation part on which GST has been charged. Suppose, now what do you mean by this? Suppose the cost of capital goods is 500 and GST is 50. Total amount is 550 that you have paid. Now, if you are charging depreciation on the GST portion also, then input tax credit in respect of such capital goods will not be available. So remember, input tax credit is not available if depreciation is charged on the GST component also. If depreciation is not charged on the GST components, in the second example, 500 is the cost of capital goods, GST is 50, total is 550. But depreciation is just charged on the cost and not on GST. Therefore, ITC will be available. So always remember, in case of capital goods, either you will get the benefit of depreciation or you will get the benefit of ITC. You will not get double benefit. Now, so we have seen that in case of inputs and capital goods, what's the provision. Now, in case, what is the time limit of taking ITC? Suppose I make a purchases today. Can I take that credit of that purchases I have made, tax what I paid on my purchases, up to n number of years? No, there is a time limit. So for in case of first time, if you're taking the ITC for the first time, it can be taken up to the date of filing annual return or the date of filing September month's return of succeeding financial year. You all know that financial year starts from April to March of the succeeding year. Now, the due date of taking the ITC of one particular financial year will be due date of filing the September month's return of the succeeding financial year or date of filing annual return, whichever is earlier. Suppose you are taking recredit, there is no time limit for that. Next, now documents that we have already seen, that for one condition for claiming for the eligibility of ITC was that the dealer should be in possession of the document. Only if he has a document proving that he had made purchases, then only he can avail ITC. So the document can either be, as I told you, invoice, it can be a debit note, it can be a bill of entry, any particular statement showing that a proof that he has made the purchases and paid tax on that. Next, now once I have made some purchases, I have to make the payment of that purchases. Now purchases is usually done on credit. Now I as a dealer should make sure that when I'm making purchases, I should make the payment of it to the supplier within 180 days. Now suppose if I fail to make the payment to the supplier within 180 days, whatever ITC I had availed, I had taken, that will be reversed. I will lose that ITC what I have taken. Then later, whenever I make payment to the supplier, I will again get the recredit of that particular ITC. So rule 37 is only telling that the payment to the supplier should be made within 180 days. If it is not made within 180 days, then the credit taken will be reversed, and then later whenever the dealer makes the payment to the supplier, the recredit will be availed. Next, how can I use this ITC? Now see, if I have made an interstate purchases, then I will pay IGST, so I will get a credit of IGST. If I made intrastate purchases. Then I will get a credit of CGST and credit of SGST. So how can I use this credit? So there is a manner of utilizing the credit. Old rule of utilizing ITC that was used from July 2017, from when GST was implemented till Feb 2019. ITC IGST credit was first used for the payment of IGST output tax. Similarly, CGST credit was first used for the payment of CGST output tax. Similarly, SGST and UTGST credit was first paid to pay off CGST and UTGST output tax. So remember, in the old rule, first the utilization was made towards the respective heads, and then balance remaining was used to pay. Suppose if IGST payment is being made, IGST credit is used for that. If still surplus is remaining under IGST credit, it could be used for CGST or SGST payment. First CGST payment and then SGST payment. Similarly, if CGST payment is to be made and CGST credit is available, and the balance could be used for the payment of IGST. Remember, the CGST credit and SGST credit cannot be used for each other. If the balance is remaining, it can be used only for the payment of IGST. Then there was a new rule that is applicable from Feb 2019, which says that the payment of either IGST, CGST or SGST output has to first be used from IGST credit. So first IGST credit has to be exhausted. In the earlier rule, the respective heads were first used. Now in the new rule, first IGST credit has to be exhausted, and once IGST credit is exhausted, if some balance is remaining, suppose IGST payment is to yet remaining to be paid, it could be paid from the balance of CGST or SGST, and CGST first will use IGST credit, and if balance is remaining, then it is going to use its own credit, and then IGST credit is first going to be used for SGST payment, and if balance is remaining, then it is going to use SGST credit. So this is a manner of utilization of credit. Remember, in this module, you do not have any problems. So you just need to remember the provisions. So we have completed with input tax credit. Now let us see registration. Registration, under that, in this chapter, you have persons not liable for registration. In our earlier module, we have seen persons liable for registration. Now in this module, we have persons not liable for registration. So who are not liable for registration? Persons engaged exclusively in the business of supplying goods and services, or both, which are not liable to tax. Suppose if I am selling a particular goods or providing services which are not liable under GST to tax, why should I get registered? So I am a person who is not liable to get registered under GST. Suppose if I am selling alcohol for human consumption, am I required to get registered under GST? No, because alcohol for human consumption is not taxable under GST. Next, persons exclusively engage in the business of supplying goods, services, or both, which are wholly exempt from tax. Now suppose if I am selling unbranded maida, atta, all daily necessity items, food items, dairy products. Now, it is wholly exempt from tax. Now, do I need to get myself registered under GST? Simple answer is no, because I am providing goods which are wholly exempt from tax. Next, agriculturist to the extent of supply of produce out of cultivation of land. So, suppose if I'm an agriculturalist, okay, and I'm doing cultivation of land, so I need not get myself registered because I'm exempt. Next, specified category of persons notified by the government on GST Council recommendation. So as and when GST Council will recommend a particular set or category of people who need not get themselves registered, and I fall under that category, then I need not get myself registered under GST. Now next, and this not liable to registration under GST is covered under section 23. Now section 24 talks about compulsory registration in certain cases. Now, what do you mean by compulsorily registration? Compulsory means you have to mandatorily get yourself registered. Now, who are those? Any person who is making interstate supply. If any person is making any interstate taxable supply, okay, he has to get himself registered. So irrespective of the threshold, now here the threshold will not apply. Threshold means you all know it is 40 lakhs in case of goods, and if the turnover exceeds 20 lakhs in case of services, then that person has to get mandatorily registered under GST. So that is the threshold limit. But these what I'm talking is here compulsory registration for these threshold will not apply. So irrespective the limit of the turnover of goods or services, they need to mandatorily get themselves registered. So any person who's making any interstate supply of goods or services has to get themselves compulsory registered. A casual taxable person has to making taxable supply. Remember, he is making taxable supply has to get himself compulsory registered. Persons who are required to pay tax under reverse charge. Reverse charge we have already seen in detail. So any person who is required to pay tax under reverse charge has to get compulsory registered. Non-resident taxable person making taxable supply has to get compulsory registered. E-commerce operator, persons who are required to deduct tax under section 51. Persons who make taxable supply of goods and services or both on behalf of another taxable person, such an agent. Agent is providing taxable supply of goods and services on behalf of the principal. He need to get himself compulsorily registered. Next, input service distributor has to get himself compulsorily registered. Then persons providing online information and data access base access or retrieval services, that is OIDAR services, from a place outside India to a person in India, he has to get himself compulsory registered. Persons who are required to pay tax under reverse charge, and such other persons which the government may notify on the recommendation of the council. So as and when council may come up with a recommendation that certain set or category of people have to get themselves compulsorily registered, then they will come under the category of compulsory registered. So these 11 categories of persons, irrespective of their threshold limit, have to get themselves compulsorily registered. Now, what is the procedure for registration? Suppose if I want a GST registration number, if I want a GST registration, what is the procedure for that? So every person who is liable to get himself registered, maybe under compulsory registration or threshold has been exceeded, so he has to get himself registered. Now, what is the procedure? So every person who wants to get himself registered, okay, has to apply for registration. Where, how he has to apply? He has to go to the GST common portal, that is www.gst.gov.in. In that he has to select form part A of form GST REG 01, where he has to give his information regarding PAN number, mobile number, email, address, the state or city or the union territory where he is going to carry on his business. Now, once he fills these particulars in form A, part A of form GST REG 01 means GST registration form number 1. So his PAN number, mobile number, next what happens is his PAN number, mobile number and email address will get validated. Okay. Now obviously PAN number will get validated through the CBDT, that is Central Board of Direct Taxes database, and mobile number and email will be get verified by sending an OTP one-time password. Then once this is verified, once the PAN is verified, mobile number is verified and email address is verified, then TRN is generated. Now TRN is temporary reference number. It is generated, and after generation it is communicated to the applicant through the respective mobile number and email address. Now using this TRN, he is going to fill application in part B. Now part A is already filled. Now part B, along with some specified documents that is asked at the portal. Now this application that he is filling in part B will be forwarded to the proper officer. And on the receipt, first of all, the application and acknowledgement in prescribed form shall be issued to the applicant electronically. Now, once he is filling part B, then that application acknowledgement will be given to him electronically. That application will be forwarded to proper officer. Proper officer is nothing but an officer, a GST officer, okay, who will then verify the application. So the procedure after receipt of application, let us see below. So now the application has reached the proper officer is a person in the GST office who will verify everything, the documents, because in part B he will be even attaching certain documents. So it has to be verified by a person. So the GST proper authority or officer. So what the proper officer will do, he'll examine the application that was been filled in the part B of GST REG 01. Now, if he finds that all the documents are correct, okay, then within 3 working days, he will issue to the applicant the GST registration certificate in GST REG 06. Only if he finds that all the documents are in correct order. Now, suppose if the proper officer feels that no, the documents are not in order, then the proper officer should within 3 working days, okay, from the date of receipt of application, from that day 3 working days, should seek clarification. If he wants clarification on any document or any information, additional information, within 3 working days he should inform to the applicant. Once the applicant receives that from the proper officer a document stating that he wants clarification, the applicant should then within 7 days, okay, within 7 days give all the required information to the applicant, all the required information to the proper officer. Proper officer, after receiving all the clarifications, if he is satisfied with it, then it has to issue the registration certificate in the form GST REG 06 to the applicant within 7 working days from the date of receipt of information or clarification of document. Now, if it is not satisfied, then proper officer will reject the application for reasons it has to record in writing that why the proper officer has rejecting the application. So this is the procedure for registration. Next, what is deemed registration? What is the meaning of deemed registration? Simply remember, GST there are different taxes under GST, that is IGST, CGST, SGST, UTGST. Now that doesn't mean that registration should be taken GST tax wise. It doesn't mean that I have to take separate GST registration for CGST, separate GST registration for SGST. So it is deemed that, okay, if I have taken GST registration, it is for all the it is deemed that I am registered under all the taxes, that is CGST, SGST, UTGST, IGST and cess. So remember that the grant of registration under any CGST Act will be deemed to be a registration under the CGST Act, okay, provided that the certificate of registration, the application for registration is not rejected by the proper officer. So remember, if you are taking the registration under any CGST, SGST Act, it will be deemed that you have taken registration under CGST Act because registration is not tax specific. Next, returns under GST. Now, obviously, once you are registered under GST, you need to file returns. Returns means it will be different kinds of returns are there under GST. Now, what are the modes of filing returns? Either you can file the return by directly going to the GST portal, that is common portal we know, that is www.gst.gov.in, or you can use offline utilities. It is also provided by the GST network, or you can take the help of GST Suvidha providers who will help you file returns on your behalf. So let us see what are the different kinds of returns, okay, under GST. There is GSTR1. Remember, the full form of this is GSTR stands for return number 1. Under this return, you have to give the details of your outward supply. Outward supply means all the sales or services that you have provided or given. Now, this return has to be filed monthly. The due date of this return is 11th of the next month. So, suppose if I have to file the GSTR1 for August, I have the due date up to 11th of September to file GSTR1. GSTR 2 has been suspended, and GSTR 3 also is suspended. But just for our knowledge, GSTR 2 is for giving the details of all the inward supplies. Now GSTR 1 is for all the sales, GSTR 2 is for all the purchases, inward supplies. It has to be filed monthly and the due date is 15th of next month. GSTR 3 means based on your input and output, the system will set off automatically and finalize what is the tax to be paid. Obviously, tax to be paid to the government is always output minus input tax. So again, it is monthly and 20th of the next month. GSTR 3B is where you, it is not system populated, but where you will give a summary of all the output supplies, all the input supplies, and the payment of tax that you have to make. So GSTR 3B is for the payment of GST tax. How do you derive at the payment of GST tax? Output tax minus input tax. Now it has to be filed monthly, 20th of next month. CMP 08, it is to be filed by a person who is registered under the composition levy. It has to be filed by a person who is registered under a composition levy. It has to be filed quarterly, 18th of succeeding month. We know what is composition levy. GSTR 5 is to be filed by a non-resident taxable person. It has to be filed monthly by 20th of next month. GSTR 6 is to be filed, a return to be filed by the input service distributor. It has to be filed monthly, 13th of next month. GSTR 7 is to be filed by those authorities who are deducting tax at source. It has to be filed monthly, 10th of next month. GSTR 8 is to be filed by e-commerce operators. It has to be filed monthly by 10th of next month. GSTR 9 is an annual return for a normal taxpayer, filed annually by 31st December of next financial year. GSTR 9A is to be filed, is an annual return that has to be filed by those persons who are registered under composition levy. Again, it has to be filed annually by 31st December of next financial year. GSTR 10 is the final return. Final return means suppose you want to close down your business and you have applied for cancellation of your registration. So once you apply for cancellation of your registration, so there is a final return, that is the last return that you will be filing. So it is GSTR 10. Due date, it is to be filed within 3 months of the date of cancellation or the date of cancellation order, whichever is later. GSTR 11 is to be details of inward supplies. It is to be furnished by those persons who are having UIN. Again monthly, and the due date is 20th of the month following the month for which statement is filed. So there are n number of returns, and for a normal taxpayer only 3 returns will be applicable. One is GSTR 1 showing his output, GSTR 3B showing his payment, and GSTR 9 showing his annual return. Then depending on the specified category of persons you're falling in, you need to file the different returns. Now what is first return? First return is nothing but, see, a person becomes liable for registration once he crosses the threshold limit. Now suppose he's crossed the threshold limit today, and today he's applying for registration within 30 days of becoming liable. So today is suppose 17th August, and within 17th September he's applying for registration. So thus there is a time gap for, like, today if he applies for registration, immediately he will not get the registration certificate because you know the procedure for registration. So therefore, from when he's become liable, that is 17th August, up to when he is going to get the registration certificate, there is a time gap. Now during this time gap, what happens? Suppose he gets the GST registration certificate. Suppose he gets the GST registration certificate on 30th of August. So between 17th August and 30th August, whatever supplies he's made, okay, and he's becomes liable. Since he became liable for registration, he's also liable to pay tax on that. So during that period, he can avail the ITC, okay, and he has to revise the tax invoices between 17th August to 30th August. He didn't charge GST in his bills because he was not registered. He did not get the GST registration number. But later, once he gets registered, he has to issue the revised tax invoices, okay, for that period during which he was liable, but he did not have certificate of registration. And further, what he has to do is has to declare all the sales that he's made during this period, 17th August to 30th August, in the first return. After the grant of registration, the first return, whatever he'll be filing, that information of the sales made between the period when he is liable for registration up to the period up to which he gets the GST registration certificate, all that information has to be given in the first return after getting his registration certificate. And it will be a regular return. The format is the same, regular return. Threshold limit for GST registration, we have already seen this. Now revision of returns. Suppose once I filed a return, I filed GSTR1. Okay. Now, do I have an option of revising that return? Suppose if I made any mistake, omission, something I forgot to write in the return or something I have done wrong in the return, can I revise that return? Suppose I'm filing August month's return and I make a mistake. Can I revise the return? Simple answer is no. You are not allowed to revise the return once you have filed. But you can rectify that mistake in your next month's return. Now in September month's return, I can rectify the mistake that I made in the August month's return. So revision of returns is not possible, but you can rectify the mistake in the subsequent month's return. Now what is the penalty or late fee? Return filing is mandatory under GST. Even if there is no transaction, you must file nil return. You cannot file a return if you do not file previous month's return or quarter. So if I have not filed August month's return, I cannot file September month's return. So I need to file first August month's return, then September month's return. Then late fee of GST return will be having a cascading effect, leading to heavy fines and penalties. So if I'm filing the GST return late, there is going to be late fee. Then late fee of GSTR1 is auto-populated in your liability ledger. You know there are three ledgers: cash ledger, credit ledger and liability ledger. The late fee will be auto-populated in the liability ledger. Next, late fee. What is the late fee? That is levied for delay in filing the returns. So if any registered person who fails to furnish the following by the due date, let us see what is the due date. Let us see what is the late fee. Suppose if you are making a delay in filing the statement of outward supply, that is GSTR1, or returns, that is annual return or final return, if any person is not filing these returns within the due date, what is the late fee? 100 for every day during which the failure continues, or 5,000 rupees, whichever is lower. For example, you need to file GSTR1 on 11th of the succeeding month. Now, if you have filed it on 20th, so 100 for every day during which the failure returns. So from 11th up to 20th, 100 rupees per day, or 5,000, whichever is lower. Next, if any late fee is being levied for delay in filing the annual return. So if annual return is to be filed 30th December of the next financial year. So if you are making any delay in filing the annual return, then what is the late fee you will be charged? Rupees 100 every day during which the failure continues, or 0.5% of the turnover of registered person in that particular state or union territory, whichever is lower. So depending on that state or union territory, whatever is the turnover, 0.25% of that will be taken as a late fee, or 100 every day during which failure continues, whichever is lower. So remember, this 100 per day will be calculated from the day after the due date up to the date that you're filing the return. So by this we have completed the revision of module 4, that is input tax credit. So thank you students, we have completed the revision of module 4. Thank you so much.